Hello, it is Pametria Dominique, the empowerment expert, back for another edition of Lunchbox Therapy with my Lunch and Learn series. So, today we're going to talk about generational curses, which is a very common name especially in the African American community. This is something that is used when we talk about abuse, when we talk about any type of trauma that may have occurred in a family. We may talk about illness. We may talk about just being caught up in a cycle. And so people use the term generational curses. Well, today I want to break down what that means from my perspective, and from a mental health perspective. It's not so much generational curses, but generational trauma that is passed down. And so one of the things that is important for us to identify and recognize is that trauma is not something that goes away. Trauma is not something that time will automatically resolve. And so a lot of times, particularly in the African American community, we expect people to just get over things, and we expect people to move past things. And if no real work has taken place and no true healing has been done, then it's not going to be something that you're going to move past, and it will continue to impact you and have an effect on your life until you resolve that, or until you find a way to process that. So when we talk about this generational trauma, let's use sexual abuse as a reference, because that is something that is very prevalent in the African American community as well as in the human race. Okay, so it's not specific to the United States. It's not specific to one race or gender. This is something that is very prevalent, and it is minimized in some areas, in some communities. It's minimized, and unfortunately the response to that trauma will determine how you are healed. The response, how long ago it happened before you were able to talk about it, the duration of the time period in which you endured this. So all of those things can have an impact on how you respond to your trauma. So as a child, if something has occurred to you and you tell your parental figure and it is not received in an appropriate way, it is not received in a way to empower you, to let you know that it's not your fault, to let you know that this is wrong and that we will do something about it, then that further traumatizes you, and it has a greater impact on the actual initial trauma, because it's basically validating that you were wrong and that you should not have, that you did something wrong. And it also validates that I should not have told you, because I broke that trust, and you did not safeguard my information and safeguard my emotions. So that further traumatizes the victim. So when we have someone or a family who has had multiple generations of trauma like that, it's not realistic that the parent will be able to recognize and to empathize and to validate that child's emotions, because they were not validated themselves. And so if I have been put in a position to just get over what has occurred to me, and I've been put in a position to tuck my feelings and hide my feelings, and I never had anyone to make me feel protected, it's very unlikely that I will be able to replicate the emotions needed for my child to get that healing. And so I in turn re-victimize them by not giving them the safeness that they needed to tell me this information. So that's what we call generational trauma, and that's what we call these same cycles occurring within a family, because the trauma was not resolved within this generation, and it is passed down to the next generation. And when that next generation has their trauma due to the dysfunction that has already occurred, they're not able to heal and move on, and that in turn spills over into their children and future generations. So when we talk about finding that validation, many people want to find healing through their recovery. They want to find their healing through apology from the perpetrator or from the parental person who neglected their emotions. And the reality is that won't always occur. So in the event that healing is not received through validation, then we have to be able to process those emotions without getting that validation from our loved ones. So we have to find a way to recover and process our trauma in the absence of ever getting the emotional support that we needed as a child and as an adult. So working through that with your therapist, working through that through some other means of coping would be something that would be on your individual journey. So whether that trauma is manifesting in the form of anxiety, whether it's manifesting in the form of depression, whether it is manifesting in the form of PTSD, you want to find some form of therapy, some form of treatment that helps you and allows you to process this, because it can cripple you and it can impact multiple areas of your life, whether it be your personal relationships, whether it be with finding a job, whether it be just literally functioning on a daily basis due to the crippling that can occur emotionally from this level of trauma. So finding a therapist, using tactics such as trauma-focused therapy, EMDR, processing groups, those are things that can help with processing and overcoming emotional trauma. But it is imperative that we know that it's not so much a generational curse, but the culture of your family and the culture of your families, or the lack of the culture in your family to allow your healing to take place. So we want to get away from using the term curse, as it's a specific behavior that occurs, and it is a behavior that can be rectified. Curse implies that this is permanent and there's nothing that we can do. When we talk about this thing, trauma is not a curse. Trauma can be prevented, and we need to address and have these conversations in healthy settings so that we can work on changing our behaviors in order to get different outcomes. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Pamitria Dominice, the Empowerment Expert.